Hi, I'm Rick with GoBaja.com, and we're here today with a very distinguished guest, local resident now residing here in the Bay Area, and soon to be famous, Johanna Wycoff. Goedemorgen.
Oh, goedemorgen.
Good to see you. Hoe hot is it? Yeah. You bring back the days when I was fortunate to live in the Netherlands, a beautiful country, and that is where you're from, and let's talk about that. You grew up in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah, I grew up in the Netherlands, and I was from a family of 10 children. And so in 1940, when I was 14 years old, the Germans, came into the Netherlands. And
World War II
World
began,
War
right?
II had started,
Okay.
yes. And then from that time on, my whole life changed. I mean, the whole family all changed.
Were you a teenager at that time?
I was just 14.
Just 14,
yes.
Boy. And you actually saw the Germans invaded where you lived? And
yes.
Where did you live, in Nijmegen?
In Nijmegen, which is right over the border of Germany.
Right in that area where they come
That's
together.
Right. About 18 kilometers, so that's very close. And it was a large city.
So did the Germans occupy your city at that time?
Yes, the first thing they did was they looked for all the inventors and scientists. They were being arrested. Then they started to arrest some Jewish people, the important ones. Then they started to empty the warehouses, because the Dutch warehouses were full of stuff. They expected the Germans to come into Holland.
Right.
It was expected, so everyone had bought rice and oils and all the things that they couldn't get imported after they were there.
Were you forewarned? Did you know this was happening in advance? Like, did your father or mother know through friends and relatives that something was happening?
We all knew for a year or so.
Right.
Because even at school, even when I was little, we had to practice the blackouts.
Right.
So we all knew they would come, and they needed Rotterdam, and they needed more space.
Right. And the Dutch have a lot of resources, the
Yes.
oil, shell oil, and food and dairy products and meat. The Dutch were big providers. I'm sure the Germans appreciated that time. Did you see actual Germans occupying your streets and tanks and?
They did. They not only occupied the streets, they kicked us out of the schools. And I was starting high school. I was in high school at the time. And so the high schools were all taken over, and also all the other schools were taken over, and there was nothing but war materials.
Right, so trying to change the way that you think.
Yes,
and you're learning. Well, was your experience with the Germans a pleasant experience, or was it a bad experience?
Very bad.
Okay.
Very bad.
You wrote this book, Dancing in the Bomb Shelters.
Yes.
Did that inspire you to write this book, your experience during World War II?
Not exactly. My father was from a long line of newspaper people.
Oh, okay.
And he was a journalist. And he said, write it down, one day the war is over, and then you have some kind of a history.
A diary, yeah, kind of.
So it was, but if they would have caught me, my father would have been killed.
Right.
You were not allowed to write anything against the Germans. You were not allowed to speak a word of English. English was forbidden. So everything was kept very secretly. So I had to hide it all the time. So I would take pages of my book, typed it in an office, and glue it in. But I had 4.5 years actually 5 years of war.
Was there any battles that ever took place in Nijmegen that you were a part of, or that you saw, or did you see any type of conflict?
Oh yes, all the time. And especially in 1944, when we saw the very first American parachutists dropping prematurely into my hometown. Right after that, you got the Brigadier Guards from England coming in. And so the Americans and the British fought like crazy, because it was the last city that Germany would love to see the war take place instead of in Germany.
Right.
Because you could actually walk to Germany.
Across the border.
Yes.
Bicycle across, basically.
Yeah. They took our bicycles.
To
get away, yes.
Yeah.
It's true.
So you were there for good. My goodness, you really were prisoners, pretty much.
Actually, it was the big market garden started there,
Right.
and it took a year.
So you had Montgomery there, and you had
Yes, we
Patton,
did.
and there was the Battle of the Bulge, and
Yes.
what is it, Aachen, the bridge too far.
Yeah.
So a lot of history took place right there in your backyard.
That's right. And it was the most volatile part of the war.
No kidding. Well, God bless you survived. Like my mom, my mother as well was French, and was the Germans occupied Paris, as you know, at that time too. And God bless her, both of you surviving that situation, your family. Well, tell me about the book. I mean, I've heard lots of great things about it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. But give us a little synopsis about it.
Okay, the book shows that the picture on the book is Nijmegen.
Oh yeah, that's the village. I'm familiar with it, with the bridge, right?
With the bridge.
Yeah.
And it was completely bombed out by the Americans the first time.
Right.
And then later on, General Gavin, who was the very youngest American general, took over. He was with the 82nd Airport, and he landed in Nijmegen. He was quite a guy. So I have dedicated that book to them, to the 82nd, because they were the first liberators we had. Great people. And my sister, being in the underground, had to help him to get off the street, because right near us were all these Germans, and the Alpha SS was there, and everybody was around Nijmegen. So these poor parachute troops, they fell right in the middle of the enemy. So the underground or resistance, whatever you want to call it, you had to bring them into the homes. And of course, if you were caught, you're shot.
Right, that would be treason.
That's
you would
right.
be shot and for that, or punish your family.
But they came back, and then later on I served 2 tea to Montgomery.
Montgomery, the leader of the British troops, and he was the leader actually for a while of the campaign in Europe.
At Arnhem, he did a bad job there.
He did.
Well, according to all the other ones.
Okay. So there's a lot of ego involved in wars, right? We have nothing's changed today, right?
No.
We have the changing of the guards between the politicians and the generals, and the poor soldiers are the ones out there fighting on the line. Well, did you have good experience with American soldiers? Were they nice to you, respectful to you?
Because they were the first liberators for us, so we were all euphoric.
Right.
There's no other word for it. And so it was a fantastic time for us. But what we didn't know is that they were stuck for a full year. So there's estimated 500,000 troops laying, on the streets asleep, and everyone who had a roof left over the house, which was not many of us, would bring them in for safety. So we all took it.
So you were a safe house. You basically took care of these soldiers.
Well, everyone that had a roof. I mean,
right.
People that couldn't speak a word of English took them in for
right.
safety,
right.
because they were sleeping on the streets. They were very dangerous. But one time we had a big bomb blast in the backyard, and the roof of the house went up, but came down crooked. Okay?
Oh goodness, my goodness gracious.
So every time it rained, we had to sleep with umbrellas on. It sounds funny. And then when you get into an argument with your sister, you get the umbrella. The whole bed was wet, But there are also hilarious.
There's funny things along with the terror that was happening in your life. There was real terror when you talk about dropping a bomb that only inches away from killing you. There's some laughter into it that happened. So it's kind of an interesting, bittersweet type experience that you had that brought your family and people together so close.
Yeah, all of us in the Netherlands.
And the appreciation for life, right? I mean, gosh, you're just moments away from being killed or being in the middle of a conflict, and